Welcome to the Performance Mindset Show. I'm your host, Amy Calandrino, commercial real estate advisor, investor, and author. Each week, I bring you inspiring leaders and entrepreneurs sharing about their habits, decisions, and strategy that fuel growth and lasting success. If you're ready to think bigger, build smarter, and strengthen your performance mindset, you're in the right place. Today, I have with me Álvaro Cortés, and he's a senior advisor and SIOR in Costa Rica, where he brokers office, industrial, retail, and investment deals across Costa Rica and Greater Central America. He helps both local and international clients navigate one of Latin America's most active commercial real estate markets with a strategic and highly relational approach. He's part of the global online commercial real estate community, building connections across borders, including from the introduction that brought him on the show today, Fly Jamerson. So shout out to her. That's proof that social media is continuing to become one of the most powerful networking tools in the commercial real estate world. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's awesome to be here.
Yeah, so we're both here on a Friday hanging out, even though it's going to air a few weeks later. Super excited to have you here. And you're over in Costa Rica, fellow SAOR, and then you're also part of a brokerage that's part of the global organization, Cushman & Wakefield. So
that's right. Yeah. That's right.
So fellow teammate.
There you go.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is very cool. Like we can actually see how cross-border things meet up online, and we actually expand our borders digitally. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I had a chance to chat with you a little bit before we had the show today, and I really enjoyed hearing a bit about how you got into commercial real estate in your journey. Would love to share that with the listeners, and then we can get into a little bit more about what you do in Central America and talk social media. We're going to have a good time today.
Yeah, absolutely. So where should I start? A little bit of that story and kind of how I stumbled into brokerage. That makes sense.
And then where are you from originally?
Yeah. Well,
have you been in Costa Rica your whole life, or
absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about that?
I'm Costa Rican, so born and raised. Been here since 1989. So yeah, I've been here all my life. I studied here, lived here. And most recently, I think that my only thing going outside of like my market in Central America is basically this, right? It's because of Cushman & Wakefield, the SIOR network, and sort of like trying to do global business within our organization, but also with other brokers and even prospecting outside of Costa Rica, which actually next weekend I'll tell you all about it. I'm actually heading out to Cincinnati and New York, literally to meet with potential clients and current clients.
That's so cool.
So we've been around a little bit, but yeah, born and raised. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. Try to do the executive summary, not go too long here, but training wise, I'm an architect. So it's technically what I studied to do. And I worked all my way through college. That's basically how I paid my tuition through it. And somewhere in the middle of that point, having a little bit of the college experience, but also working outside in the street, in the world, actually knowing how things work, there was a moment where I just realized, like, I'm not sure this is the vehicle that's going to take me where I want to be. But I knew nothing else. So in my mindset was, well, I just need to work harder. And in the middle of that, I was getting a little bit of a small promotion in my work. In that moment, I was in landscape architect, still studying. And they were like, hey, we're super happy about the job you're doing. We're going to promote you to have a full-time job with us, a little bit more money. I was like, hey, this is fantastic. So I remember saying to, in that point in time, my girlfriend, Yanela, today my wife, like, hey, with what you're doing and what now I'm doing, hey, why don't we get married? So we have this crazy ideas. Two 24-year-old kids, madly in love, and we just executed. And everything was like, okay, this is the real world. This is like playing house, but with actual real money. So we were 4 months into it, and then I got the really bad news that I was getting fired from that job. So it actually turned the other way, and I was like, oh, now it's not about this and this and this is what we could do. Is now how are we going to pay rent and food and groceries and stuff. So it was a tough time right there, but I remember it kind of changed a chip within my mind and was like, I don't want to be the commodity within what I'm doing and in the architecture world. So what can I do? And sort of the
Right.
real pressure of bills, where it's like, well, what can I do that will put me where I want to be in less time? Which sounds like a very intellectual thing to say that I thought about a lot, but that is me actually analyzing after the fact. What I actually did
Right.
was that I just made a list of people who I knew or knew someone who could introduce me to them that were just in a different industry and that they either seemed or were top in what they did. So I made this full list. Unknowingly, that was my first cold calling list, right? So I called all of them. Some gave me a meeting, some didn't. But this one guy named Daniel Álvarez, actually I can see him right here from my office right now. He's getting a call in his office. He said, sure, let's go grab some coffee. And he at the time worked at Colliers. He was the corporate director of Colliers International. I had no idea what that was. I remember saying like, oh, I'm just going to link to him to understand what he's doing. Corporate services director at Colliers International. The guy's wearing a suit. I have no idea. What does that mean? Like
Right.
corporate services director, whatever that means, right? And
Right.
I just wanted to meet with him because he seemed to be doing so well in his life that we just met for coffee. And he introduced me to the world of commercial real estate. And you would think that right after that conversation, you had this like background music and everything went fantastic afterward. That's when I started. I did not. But he did say in that conversation, like, hey, I'm transitioning from Colliers to something else at that point in time, but I need a year. And I was like, okay, good, but I need to pay the bills, so I'll see what I can do. And in that moment, my solution was that I got into Amazon customer service, and that was my job. And the first red flag was like, why is this job paying me more than my architecture job? My only qualification was good English and basic knowledge of stuff. So it introduced me as well to another important part of the Costa Rican economy, which is the service sector, which I'll tell you a little bit more afterwards. And that's where I started getting a little bit of calling, customer service, sort of a day-to-day real job experience. But the interesting part was the chip that had changed. And I remember that seeing
Right.
all of this customer service accounts, because they offered me not direct to client, but the seller support, which is basically the customer service that gives out to all the Amazon sellers support. And I thought, okay, that's interesting.
Okay.
And then I learned what these guys were doing. Like, not a big store. Like, it wasn't like Office Depot or Zappos or anything like that. It was a normal,
Right.
regular, everyday Joe. And I saw one of his accounts in the reporting when I was learning to do it. And this guy was billing anywhere between 350 to 370K every 15
Oh my-
days.
Every 15 days?
Every
It's crazy.
15 days. And I was in training, right? Like, this was literally my second day of training at
Yeah.
Amazon. And, and the trainer was like, well, does anyone have questions about how do you create a report? And I was like, yeah, I have a question. He was like, Álvaro, sure. What's your question? Anyone in the world could do this? And he was kind of reading between the lines, and he said, yes, but you have to take into consideration two things. You would be competing within a market of more than 300 million people in the US that don't have the export price or cost that you would have trying to sell something from Costa Rica. And that Amazon only pays to accounts that are domiciled in the United States. I don't want to make this a way too long story because this is probably for part 2 of this podcast.
Yeah, no, but it's interesting.
But
yeah.
Instead of saying, oh, yeah, sure, that's too hard, that chip that kind of switched in my mind a few months later when I lost my job in that situation, I was like, okay, those are two challenges that I need to see how I overcome them, and let's see. So instead of going to my place that day, I went to a place called Procomer. Procomer is the government institution in Costa Rica in charge of exports, imports, and foreign direct investment related stuff. So I just went to their office instead of my home that day. I took the bus to their office and I was like, hey, my name is Álvaro. I want to learn how to export stuff. And long story short, they gave me a ton of information, showed me what the suppliers were. And then that job turned more into Amazon's paying me to learn how to do this business perfectly. And in the next few months, I actually opened an Amazon account and started selling some stuff that initially I had, to be honest, I was broke at the time, right? So I had no capital to like, hey, let's buy some inventory of something and then like Iron Man or dolls or whatever and sell them. I didn't have that opportunity. So literally I was retrieving cardboard from supermarkets and redesigning them with my brother-in-law and turning them into wallets, upcycled wallets. And that was the first product I sent out into Amazon. So I was learning how to do that, right? And by the end of that year, like this, I'm telling you a very like summarized part of it, like 9 months after I had the account, which I was able to open with a third party, I knew how to export and I had a product and I sent it out using Amazon fulfillment centers. And I remember the first day I got a sale, first sale. I was like, oh, I just sold it. Okay, where is it? Secaucus, New Jersey. Click. Next day, on transit. Third day, already with the client. It was a woman. I wrote her. I was like, hey, just want to know, is everything okay? Did you receive the product? Oh, it's beautiful, awesome, so cool, Costa Rican upcycle stuff. Fantastic. I sold maybe $400 worth of those, and I was doing it such a poor job, not like improvising, that my profit, I kid you not, Amy, was maybe $18. But what I found out is what this actually works. And then I just needed to think of a different product. And I found out, or I came to the conclusion that Costa Rican coffee was a good product. And that the next year turned into almost $75,000 worth of sales on year, right? So I'm still not at the level of the other guy, but for me, it was awesome. And
are you still working at the same time? So this is kind of more of like a gig?
Oh, absolutely gig. Actually, the full story is like this. I learned this. So I thought, instead of a pay the bills job, this just turned into a training that's paying me to be trained, right? And by the end of that year, what I did profit-wise in sort of that gig was the same amount as my salary working as a service representative at Amazon.
Yeah.
But I needed time. So an opportunity came to work the graveyard shift. So I would, instead of having a normal sort of, let's say, schedule, I started at 3 a.m. and ended at 12 p.m. So less hours, better pay, and I have all of the afternoon to do this other stuff. So I was several months into that.
You're just waking up early. That's actually not that bad. Yeah. You just get used to it.
You get used to it. I remember getting up maybe at 2:30. I was then at 3 and something in the office at the Amazon Service Center here in Costa Rica, in Heredia, which actually has a huge operation here. We'll talk more about that later.
Yeah.
And I just got used to that. And about a year, I remember I was taking those customer service calls. I get a phone call on my cell phone. And I look at it, and it said, Daniel Alvarez. I'm like, oh, the guy from Colliers, my friend. Okay, I'm going to take this call. So I took the call, and he was like, hey, I already put up my stuff. I'm no longer at Colliers. Do you want to retake these conversations that we had 10, 11, 12 months ago? And I was like, absolutely. So then went to an interview with him. Very badly dressed, by the way. I did not think that through. I went into an interview with him. And he basically said, this is the job. It is commission only. There's a lot of risk, but there's a lot of upside. And I'm sure, perfect. And said like, hey, I think we have a good clicking here, a good vibe. If you want to come in, job's yours, but think about it. And when he said that, it was like, hey, I get totally that it's commission only. Like, I fully understand that. Like, just a question. Like in the paying the bills kind of thing on your day-to-day, like, how does that work? And sort of reading between the lines, he told me, you know what, I understand. It seems that obviously you're not in a position where you have some savings to grow out of. So he offered me what I think in English is called a draw, right? Which they will advance you a little bit of commission. Then you'll put the pieces together. And I was like, okay, that works.
Kind of factoring your receivables like a business kind of thing. You're just like kind of like, okay, I know I'm going to do this and I know I'm going to succeed. You know,
but I remember I had zero experience in commercial real estate. Like to be honest, one of the biggest takeaways there is that Daniel saw something in me that I hadn't discovered myself. Saw this potential and he believed in it. And basically I said yes. Came in a couple of weeks later. That was February 2015. And I've been with Cushman and Wakefield ever since. So actually next
Happy
February,
decade.
yeah, thank you. We actually had our 10-year anniversary as a firm yesterday because the Cushman and Wakefield AV advisory firm actually started January 2015 to operate in Costa Rica. So I
Okay,
am
cool.
basically guy number 3 in the storyboard. There's the founder,
That's so cool.
the other guy, which is Franco, currently one of my best friends. Our families just get absolutely great together. We love him, and Sandra, his wife, and Bito, their daughter. And we've been through ups and obviously through downs. But to be honest, what I really think is so awesome about this team in particular is that we celebrate the big ups. We've had downs. We've had friction internally. We've had great celebrations, great deals fall through. But the one thing that has been constant since January, February 2015 is that our team always is like, hey, I have your back. And sort of that culture within our
Yeah.
team is no matter what, and I can be like pissed at you, but it's about the situation. You as a human,
Hmm.
we will always believe in you, and we expect that back as team culture. And I think that's what kept us growing ever since, and becoming literally the leading firm, not only in Costa Rica but in Central America in office and industrial real estate. So I've been with Cushman ever since, and then again, my formation is basically made here through mentoring from Daniel, one of the ex-partners, with Franco and many
Hmm.
other teammates. And thankfully, I'm now in the place where I get to give back a little bit and say, hey, how can I help who I was 10 years ago today? And that's sort of where
Yeah.
I'm standing at right now.
Well, it seems to me that your previous positions it never felt like 100% like right.
Mm-hmm.
But with your relationship of where you were, it was just like, yeah, absolutely. There was like no like real like hesitation for you, but still you didn't really know commercial real estate. Yeah. So when was the specific moment that you knew that this is what you were destined for?
I'll put it this way. I'm going to reframe the you're destined for.
Okay.
So the
And yeah, okay, reframe it.
yeah,
But like,
but
when did you feel like it was just it
like
was the right
when did
like
it click?
fit?
When I said like this is a
Yeah,
right
when did
fit,
it
right?
click?
So that is the reframing, right? So basically,
Yeah,
and this is true, like you can pick up the phone, call my wife, say, is this true, or is she like making this very interesting story that has a good punchline? Every Friday when I got back home, when he was like, hey, you look a little bit stressed, like, yeah, I think that Daniel's gonna fire me. She was like,
oh, no.
why do you say that? Why do you think that? He said, like, I don't understand anything that I'm doing. Like, I'm getting into financial analysis and then surveys, and then I see them, they're in a negotiation. They were like, oh, the price is this. Like, how do we got into that price? Like, how does that make sense? Nothing made sense at the beginning, right? But then again, I had great mentors in both Daniel and Franco, and the teams around the technical stuff, like the PDS team, the project managers. The
Yeah,
only good thing I would say is that everything related to urban demographics, buildings, I was a-okay with the architecture background. Like that helped me a lot
yeah.
in my sort of
Hmm.
the learning curve. But that feeling of the Friday I don't understand anything, it went
Yeah.
away. It went away around month 12. But the moment where I remember, actually, I remember the exact moment. I was sitting down in our office and we were doing
Hmm.
a transaction for DHL. And we were starting that out. And I just made the whole list, started the transaction, set up some meetings, met with the real estate director. In that moment was Bob Ingles. This guy was based in Plantation, Florida. And I remember sitting, making sort of the brief to start that transaction managed process. And I remember that day sitting down saying, oh, I think I understand this now. And that was
Oh,
almost 2 years into it, like all of the cumulative knowledge. And it
yeah,
really, at that sort of in that same time frame, those same months, that's when I started to see my career just going exponentially up.
yep,
Because it's all about, for me, brokerage is cumulative knowledge and then
yeah,
actually building a strong pipeline. And pipelines are not built for today. Pipelines are built for the future, right? So the deals that we're thinking of today are the deals of the future. And the deals that we're closing today are the work of the past. And once we got a sort of that hold, that pipeline has been consistently growing. Thank goodness. We've been fortunate not only of being in a very privileged and fortunate position with great clients, it's about the
Mm-hmm.
whole work the team is doing to keep on building relationships and pipeline. But sort of that two and
Right.
a half year, that's when it exploded. That is also the time where I ended my draw. I remember that I never caught up with the things, which was very, very tough to deal with at the moment. But sort of in that inflection point, 2.5 years, draw ended, and then I started to actually live commercial real estate brokerage, literally from a commission
Mm-hmm.
only perspective, and with the momentum that was built for 2 years before, and that we keep building every single day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does. I mean, like, the relationships that you're making today may or may not come to fruition for years to come. Like, it's just so interesting to see that. So, and looking back, what do you wish that you knew when you first were starting out?
Oh, how to pay taxes and all of the responsibilities of being a an independent contractor in a sort of in that technical part. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh
Obviously,
yeah.
yes, because that was a big shock. I remember that the only time I think I felt that same way was the first time I played Monopoly as a kid. It was that same level of disappointment.
Oh my god,
Uh,
I hated to roll four on my first turn, like
yeah,
in Monopoly. That's like the worst. You
that's
know
the
what I'm
worst.
talking about? You start at go, and if you roll four, you land on income tax.
Yep.
Awful, awful. Ugh.
That real life version, right?
Yeah.
But definitely, I would say what I would wish to know then is that I would have wished not only to double down a little bit more on the technical knowledge from day one, but more than
Yep.
anything, it's just about I would have doubled down not only on the technical. I was very let's get the technical stuff down. And years after, I started to understand more the relational side of the business. And
Yes.
one thing that I would have said if I could go back in the past is don't press the accelerator off from the knowledge and technical side, but be
Okay.
very
Yeah.
intentional in building genuine, real relationships because people do business with people they like and trust. And
Yeah.
they do not only trust you because you're very knowledgeable, right? And I learned that like halfway into it. I wouldn't say learn it, but I don't mean it learning from an intellectual perspective, like, oh, wait a second, it's more about this other relational part as well. It's carrying beyond deals and transactions and going beyond that. And I would say that's one thing that I would say I would have loved to have that mindset shift earlier in my career.
Well, it's interesting is since I'd made the switch to Cushman, a big reason why I did it as well was like I just felt like I spent so much time like running my brokerage shop that
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I didn't do as many conferences and as many things because ultimately I was overseeing the HR, I was overseeing the finance, I was overseeing all these things in addition to like counseling my clients is
Mm-hmm.
because, and again, if I decided to scale my firm and I wanted to do management, but I learned over my 15 and a half years that my true passion was being with the client, hearing about the challenges that they had and coming up with like a solution for them.
Mm-hmm.
But it was interesting. Like I didn't go to like as many, I've only been to one SAOR
Mm-hmm.
like conference since joining in 2022. But it's so interesting. Just last Friday, a week ago, I got a call from someone I met at that conference.
Mm.
And they're like, I remember you're in Orlando and you not only do office, but you actually do some retail. And there's this retail site over here, like in Orlando, that I want you to do a broker opinion of value with for
Mm.
sell. And so it's interesting. I would agree with you. Still, it's never too late in brokerage, like to put that emphasis on the relationships. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the books I read just this year, and I really want to keep on my desk and keep handy, is called Rich Relationships by Selena Sue. And hopefully my show notes lady puts that in here, but it is such a masterful book.
Interesting.
And it talks about like your different, you have your level one, that's probably like relationships, probably like Franco, and you're talking about your families get together and you guys travel together and they know how you tick and they know everything. And then you have your twos and your threes and your fours and your fives and like having out how to navigate them. And then like, let's just say there's someone crazy that you see
Yeah.
online, like Gary V or something like that, or Tony Robbins. Like, how do you get into there and navigate that? It's a really cool book. And so like, I like read the book and kind of took some of the stuff that she put together and put together like a plan for next year. But I think it's you know, even if you didn't do it earlier on, it's never a bad idea to like do that. But like, yeah, she had like a different things and talk about your impact goals, your visibility goals, your like quality of life goals.
Yeah.
And then like, who are the people that are like core to you? And so I think spending strategic time, one of the things I want to do in the coming year is set aside strategic time to like do that and be more intentional like with my relationships and all of that. So, and making sure people know I'm like appreciate them. Like I appreciate you coming on the show, and like sometimes you don't even say that. Like
Right.
isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you get so caught into the whirlwind of things.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
yeah. So I think that's a great point. Yeah. Well, I want to talk about, because unique. I'm here in Florida. I'm in Orlando, in the Sunshine State, and so we have the House of Mouse here. Is what I call Disney World sometimes, and all of that. And
The House of Mouse
it's
is
pretty
awesome.
cool here. But what I love to hear often is like, for instance, like, you know, Bob, and so it's interesting. You didn't know as much about commercial real estate. You know, Bob Knackle, like who's like this titan in New York, and like everybody knows him, and now he's an SAOR, which is awesome as well. He didn't know that he was getting into commercial real estate. He thought Coldwell Banker was a bank.
Right. I remember that story.
And so, but whenever I talk to him, I always want to hear about the New York market. And so like, it would be interesting hearing from you in Costa Rica. I know what's going on in my neck of the woods, but like what makes Costa Rica an exciting commercial real estate market right now? And let's talk about some of the different sectors.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'll put it this other way, right? So let me just give you a quick stats on Costa Rica, very like up in the air, 28,000 feet sort of vision. So
I'd love to hear it, because like when I think of Costa Rica, I think about getting away and going surfing, but
and
it's way more than that.
And you're absolutely right. But that is just the tip of the iceberg,
Right.
So starting out maybe there, like Costa Rica is this very privileged place that sometimes goes under the radar, with the exception of those like very marketed or perceptions that the world has since, I don't know, maybe the 60s and 70s. And they're absolutely right. Like, it's this beautiful country with this beautiful nature, like the beaches, the volcanoes, all of that. Don't get me wrong. Like, I live where you guys vacation, and it's awesome. And by the way, you live where I vacation with my daughter, like House of Mouse, like that's where I want to go. But what's interesting is that in this very small territory, there are like these sparks of very wild and interesting and amazing things that just blow our minds. Like, for example, almost 5% of the world biodiversity is located here. Our electrical grid is more than 98% renewable. And then again, these are the things that happen, not necessarily because we made this amazing plan that we thought about. It's just that we stumbled upon within the challenges that we have. Like, for instance, like the lack of access to oil since many, many years ago. We're like, how are we not going to depend on this? And before we were even thinking that renewable was a thing and sustainability, it was more a survival instinct of, we have these natural resources, we will use this for our energy. So we created dams and geothermal and wind power. And today we're a lot ahead of the curve from that standpoint. So it looks amazing, but it came out from being the small player and the little guy, and not being able to have some great resources that many other countries or locations had. But today it feels different, right? It feels like, oh, this was super on purpose. But we've taken this and say, now we need to lean into this as a country and as part of the strategy. And then one of the big changes right now for commercial real estate has actually happened between, I would say, the 80s and the 90s. We had a big crisis in the 80s that was very tough. All of our economy was mainly agricultural back then. And with that crisis, the country had a very, very, very tough time. So early 90s, the model started to shift, and it shifted into the service sector very abruptly. Actually, there's a very specific milestone that happened, that is when Intel uh, placed an operation here, a huge operation that was this catalyst. You can actually Google this. If you put like the Intel effect in Costa Rica, you'll have a ton of information of what happened as that catalyst
They call it
afterwards.
the Intel
The Intel
effect.
effect. You can literally Google that
Okay.
phrase and you'll get a lot of information on it. And what's very interesting about it is that it sort of trickled down into many other things that happened. And it was the inclusion of free trade zone regimes and how we positioned ourselves from a tax perspective into attracting
Mm-hmm.
foreign direct investment, which is the norm now. It's not a new thing, but we pioneered a lot of that. So we started attracting companies through that regime that allowed them to place an operation with very highly educated people. And one of the main reasons it's very education is very high here is that way back when I'm gonna miss this one. This my social studies teacher is gonna be very very disappointed in me because I'm almost certain it's 1948, but I'm not completely sure. We abolished the army, and all of the um, funds and resources were funneled into education. So the level of education is since then has uh, grown at a different pace from the rest of the region. And being so close to our
Oh,
main partner, which is the US and currently is, we became a culture that's very Americanized. Like our English levels are very high, the education level is very high. Public education is great. Like you can get college education in Costa Rica, very high level college education that is state based, and it costs very little money. Like you could go into a very high performing college education for something like $600 per quarter, something like that, or less. And if you're a fantastic
wow.
student, it can cost you zero. You know what I mean? And it's one of the most recognized universities here in Costa Rica. We have UCR, Universidad Costa Rica, and Tec, Tecnológico, which is sort of a mini Costa Rican version of MIT. And there's a lot of engineering going on, very high education. So then again, back into the history, Costa Rica started out into shifting into the services model. So we started tracking by Intel, which actually was semiconductors and a little bit of manufacturing, but they brought services as well. Shared services, contact center, sort of this bottom line starting out into giving customer service and other things into the US and other parts of the world. And that has evolved ever since nonstop, growing. I think that it's roughly between 10 and 15% interannual growth from free trade zone regime companies, which is pretty fast growth for a very small country like ours. Like our local economy grows maybe 3%, which is what the US grows, but we're a small country and you guys are huge.
Yeah.
So it really, we niche down into this and everyone just like, hey, we need to become better at this. And we went from contact centers to something a little bit more sophisticated, and then shared service centers to centers of excellence to today doing R&D and lab work as well. So
Wow.
a lot of the companies who are in the US are based as well in Costa Rica from a nearshoring perspective. So from an office market perspective, it's tremendously interesting what has happened. Let's say 2000 and upwards, like the last
Mm-hmm.
25 years, you will find Class A plus buildings that will compete with any building in the US with US standards. So real estate market reacting to all of that. And the best way that I have to describe it, Amy, is that even though Costa Rica is very small, it's like we have a tiny bit of every major market in the US and some other strategic parts of the world. So when you see what type of companies are driving growth into Costa Rica, it's not necessarily Costa Rican companies. It's actually the
Mm.
nearshoring effect from Amazon and Pfizer and Microsoft and Roche Pharmaceuticals and so on and so forth. Um, give you an example. Roche consolidated a couple of years ago. We actually made this transaction. It took us 2 years to land it. They started with a small shared service center operation for the Americas, and they found such amazing productivity and talent. And with even though we're not the cheapest country, I'll tell you that, like we're not there, we're not number one at cost, but we are definitely probably one of the most productive and efficient ones. So they brought this
Okay.
out and they 4x'd their operation in less than 3 years. And then because of
Wow.
their strategy, they were like, hey, we're going to consolidate Americas because we're going to use a shared service centered model they call it a follow the sun strategy, which means basically they will have redundancy of the services as your time zones move along. And all of that turned into a 32,000 square meter, which is almost 330,000 square feet of office space, single user, one building that they actually purchased. They built to suit that building. That is, I would say, one of the largest office transactions that has been done in our entire Central American region. And the main driver behind that is Costa Rican talent and sort of how the ecosystem of the service sector works along that. And to put that into a number stat, from an export perspective, CINDE, which is one of the FDI agencies that we have here that used to be part of the government, but now they're a private organization, they reported last year that $16.1 billion were being exported from the service sector into the US and other parts of the world. So Costa Rica punches above its weight. It's a little bit what the message is, right? And that is only service sector. And that's what the stepping stone that allowed me to go actually from being a broke architect into not having a job, getting into that segment, and then getting into commercial real estate. So it really feels very full circle when I'm saying like, hey, I work for that company and we're doing a real estate deal with Amazon, which our agency leasing team, which is led by another group. We always separate to avoid conflicts of interest, but they actually did one of the largest Amazon transactions here. So it feels very full circle for me in that sense. And then the other part of Costa Rica, then again, this is very niche, but the other one, which is very impressive, then again, going back to perception, back in the 70s and 80s, agricultural was our number one export as a product, right? Actually, if you ask anyone, I actually love doing this. Like, if you had to guess, because of the perception of what you have of Costa Rica and what's, let's say, marketed or perceived like.
And what's in Central America?
And what's in Central America?
Bananas, probably.
Okay, bananas.
Yeah.
Then again, if this was 1974, you'd probably rewrite. Today, even though, and we still are the number one export of bananas and pineapples to the world. We still are. But today, our number one export product is medical devices.
Medical devices.
Medical devices. So Costa Rica exports $8.6 billion worth of medical devices to the US and several other economies.
Wow.
And then again, it's something that has been growing in the middle. And this is something very from the Costa Rican culture. We love to work. Like, it's part of an anthem. Like, that's how the anthem ends. Like, Viva siempre el trabajo y la paz. Forever live work and peace. Right? And
forever live, work in peace.
Or long live, work in peace. That's literally the last part of our national anthem. Wow. So it's very culturally embedded. We are great workers, culturally speaking. And then again, great time zone alignment with the US and several other parts of North America, like Canada and let's say Mexico and other things. And then you have great levels of English, great levels of education. And we went from being a not low level, that's not the right word, simple processes manufacturing, right? Disposables, textiles, that kind of thing. We became too expensive for that because of all of the growth in education and in the country. And all of that went into other parts of Central America. We were very worried back then in the 90s. Switch the chip, go into services. But now going into the manufacturing side of medical devices for the past years, growth has been exponential. And the ecosystem has grown with very sophisticated players. So probably one of the first ones were companies like Abbott Medical, Hologic, that kind of thing. But all of these, what an interesting phenomenon is that they need their suppliers close by. And they have enough volume so that the suppliers then come into our market. And then they found a very good labor market, very sophisticated labor market, and a very sophisticated real estate market. So they were like, oh, I can get the standards. I can get a LEED certified building. I can get a well certified building here. And I can get fantastic output for the level of sophistication that I need to actually create medical devices. And then the last part of that ecosystem is the contract manufacturers. So once we had that built in, it just started growing exponentially. So to give you two other nerdy stats. So our entire office market is roughly 24 million square feet. Actually, Costa Rica
Okay.
has the most amount of square footage per capita in all of Latin America. So even though we're smaller, nominally speaking, in relation to our population, we have the largest office market. And in terms of industrial, our industrial market is actually 66 million square feet. This very small
Wow.
place in the middle of nowhere. And the main driver behind it are medtech and life sciences manufacturing, advanced manufacturing. There's a small portion of semiconductors. Intel is part of that, but the ecosystem hasn't like run yet. And now with all of the tariffs and sort of the Chips and Science Act
Yeah.
kind of in the middle, there's uncertainty there, but the ecosystem is there and working, right? So we're talking about this very interesting deals. Like if you're a broker, you would never think that Johnson and Johnson made a $1 billion commitment last year in Costa Rica. And when you go and you see what they're building today, I kid you not, Amy, it looks like an Amazon fulfillment center because of just how massive it is, but it's a medical device manufacturing site. And you will see things like Penumbra Inc. that we closed actually 8 months ago, 350,000 square feet of industrial built-to-suit project, and so on and so forth. I can tell you of literally hundreds of thousands of deals that we've done in the past 11 years that what they talk about is a very niche focused market with very sophisticated real estate that needs very sophisticated levels of brokerage, very technical ones. And the best part of all,
Yeah.
because this is for all my brokers out there, we have the same fees that are paid in the US, right? Which is usually concerned, right? When I'm co-brokering, that's one of the things that they never want to say it up front, but they are concerned about it. Yes, absolutely. Like when you go to Europe or other countries, like, oh, what is it, like half a month of rent or like 0.05% of, no, we do 5% of sales and 5% of leases and 2.5 of anything that's beyond 5 years. So it's a very competitive brokerage market as well. So we've been very fortunate, and I was very fortunate to kind of stumble upon this, right? As I said, this is where the reframing goes circle back. I wouldn't be able to tell like when did I know like I was meant to be a broker. The honest answer to that is, oh, I'm not. I just stumbled into it, and I've been fortunate enough to develop a career with an amazing group of humans that I get the privilege to call my
Right.
team into these two very fantastic sectors, which is, in my case, office and now industrial for the past couple of years. I actually didn't tell you this, but I was specialized only office tenant rep for almost 8, 9 years. And then for some
Wow.
situations that we had in the growth of the team and some other stuff, sort of the opportunity came into, hey, can you also help us out in industrial? I know that we've historically been fully specialized, but would it make sense to have sort of this dual specialization into it? And to be honest, it's been amazing. Really, really interesting to get this last 2 years of knowing and understanding way more deeply the industrial market. And then again, with the group of people that I work with Camilo, Julian, Daniel, Franco, all of these guys that are just experts at what they do. We've been able
Yeah.
to create this fantastic team that's fully specialized, and that I'll put you head to head with any team in anywhere on in the world. I mean, the
Well,
people here are
just look
amazing.
at what your background was. Like you were going to be an architect. You're super analytical. You're super diving into the details. You're one of those people that you got to understand like how it works. That's super evident from like our conversation.
Mm-hmm,
So like I have no doubt that you're like, okay, so okay, this is what I'm doing. This is how this product works. And then you're probably just breaking it down into like component pieces and figuring it all out. And then again, being able to design these incredible solutions for those that you serve using, just everything that kind of comes together cumulatively.
oh, absolutely. Like I think that if I would have to say once what's like one superpower that I have in my mind within the other
Yeah.
965 flaws that I do also have is that I am fantastic at pattern recognition. So
Yeah.
it has helped me a lot, particularly in this industry, because and I'm not going to use my own phrase because it's going to sound like I'm blowing my own horn. But Franco, my very
Yeah.
best friend, we were once playing this card game and there was this card that said that, like, hey, can you describe what superpower would you give to the people in there? And it was sort of this conversational kind of thing playing. And we were having a round. And he said this. He said, I think that Varo's, they call me Varo, right? That's my nickname. Varo's superpower is that he can see 3 or 4 solutions where most of us can only see one. And that for me is the pinnacle of what has helped me within this industry, particularly, as I said, with many other flaws in the way. But I would say that is one thing that, especially for companies that are entering to markets that they don't know nothing about,
Right.
it's understanding pattern recognition, not only from a negotiation standpoint, but everything. How does the ecosystem works, and how does a real estate strategy feed into creating the best decisions possible that will make my business perform at its top capacity? Meaning that being talent retention or cost efficiencies or whatever it might be, right? All businesses are different. But understanding that and then translating that into actionable real estate criteria, that is what sets us apart as a team. And then again, I know that that's a little bit of where I come in as part of that ecosystem. And then we have like Franco with all the analytical stuff, and Camille and Julian and Daniel, and then everyone else, right? And I'm only talking office and industrial, which is where I'm personally involved, but it's a one-stop shop, right? So what you mentioned at the beginning, we have a team that does capital markets and retail, and then others that do agency leasing, and it's an interesting place to be because we get a lot of visibility of the market, right? So it feels like we're getting privileged information just because of how much business we're doing.
Wow. This has been a lot of fun. So I like to close it out with some rapid fire questions.
Go ahead.
And some cool questions. But before, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to talk about?
Let me see. I would say that one of the things, and probably this is for part 2, if it gets enough hits and it makes sense for you as a podcast, what has become important for me that has nothing to do with business and everything to do with it is mental health. That definitely has been a pinnacle.
That's right. We did chat about that a little bit on our call.
But,
and it's interesting you kind of bring that up because like this morning, I have a hard time making myself sit still and recharging my batteries, but like I live on my calendar, and just like I said, like blocking off time to work on relationships, but you got to like block off time to recharge your own batteries and work on your mental health. So yeah, let's chat a couple minutes about that before we transition over to rapid fire, and we can always have another conversation too.
I mean, there's so much to talk about it, but to do sort of the executive summary, the only thing that I would say is that we live in a culture where that is talked about. There is awareness of it, but there is no real actionable things or not things. Let me rephrase that. Culturally speaking, it's tough to do that in the midst of what you have to do in your everyday and the grind, the hustle, especially being in commercial real estate, that it seems that they just don't click and add up. Like you either have one or the other. That is a myth that we need as an industry to tackle and have some vulnerable and real conversations about mental health, both in women and men. And understanding that your job and your productions and your thing are not your identity, if that makes sense. And it's just part of something bigger called you, right? And we sort of lose track of it. And at least I'll call it out from my own experience, because I got into a place where I burned myself out to the ground, just trying to be the most and best and everything, which is a quote unquote good goal to have. But when it's isolated from the rest of what makes you, it is not the greatest goal to have. Right. So I'll just say that about it, and that I've been being very intentional because it not only affects you, it affects your wife and your husband and your daughter, and it affects your teammates and the relationship with them, and then with yourself. Because then how will you keep on going if you just don't have the energy or the want to it or the gasoline to move forward? And a big part of that is just slowing down and making time for that sort of mental part.
I think too, like having someone that can like hold you like accountable. Like, so I have one friend that we try to out together at least once a week because just in being moms and doing different things, it's hard for us just to like have like a more like in-depth conversation. But you
Mm-hmm.
could be totally, we could be rowing and lifting
Right.
weights and like chatting with each other at the same time. But I said to her, I'm like, yeah, like I really want to grow. I want to start to get like bigger titles, but I got to be careful. Like I got to do this in such a way that I'm one of those people I can really put the pedal to the metal and
Mm-hmm.
I'm a very hard worker. And then other parts of my life fall apart. And so like I always kind of think about like the mason jar
Mm-hmm.
and like you have to have your big rocks in here first, then fill in with the little rocks and then fill with the littler rocks and then
Mm-hmm.
fill in with like the sand.
Right.
And for me, my four pillars are my faith and my family and my fitness, and then obviously my finances and
Mm-hmm.
making sure those are fully whole. But a lot, I think that it can be in alignment. I think you have to be very careful about client selection.
Mm-hmm.
Also understanding what is enough in like your life so that you still have room for like the other things. But no, I suffered a mental breakdown like 4 years ago
Mm-hmm.
that like completely changed the trajectory of my life. And I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you or even like your teammate now if like I didn't finally like start like being more internal and analyzing things and being more intentional and like really putting the rocks first and realizing that it is really important. So like it's hard. So
Yeah.
but my point is like having someone you can hold yourself accountable. So I told her like if you see me getting too intense, pushing too hard, like that kind of thing, and I'm not meeting with you because I'm too busy and that's happening too often, then there's something wrong. Alignment's off. I mean, it's
Right.
okay every so often for you to make exceptions to things, but
Yeah.
I think having someone who's accountable too,
Yeah.
in addition
I
to your
mean,
spouse,
that
if
is
possible.
a great idea. I do not have that. I'm going to take a note of that because I love it
You
because
like that?
I love it because it's your it's your blind spot what
Yeah.
gets you into that point, right?
Yeah.
So if someone's looking after your blind spot, he's like, hey, by the way, remember you made this commitment and this thing and you told me that this is important. I am not seeing it. And I'm sure you're not seeing it as well. So I need to give this call out and raise this flag for you so you recircle back. Because you just used a word that we take very lightly, but it's so important because words mean things. And you said, oh, there's an exception every now and then. And we think about exceptions, and then the problem is that conceptually speaking, exceptions, because of what the word means, cannot
Right.
happen every time, nor every day, nor every week. You know what I mean? So it's about how do we get very intentional understanding that should be exceptions and not the norm. When those behaviors become your norm, that's when you start to get into a muddy, slippery slope, and then it becomes tough on not only you but probably those around you, right? But yeah, it's I'm very interested to hear a little bit of that transition story. Probably for the part two because I know that we're like 50 minutes in.
Oh
But
yeah, oh god. Oh, some of my
but
shows go a long. Actually, I've had an hour and 10 minute one. I'm
okay,
like, if I didn't do brokerage, maybe I'd be like Joe Rogan and we would just say keep going and going and
right,
going and
right,
going.
right,
But
right.
here we go. But yeah, no, I think that's really worth like thinking about. But yeah, that was one of the tricks I had to put. You know why? How that came about though is last year I was going to downgrade my membership at the gym,
Mm-hmm.
and I have this like elite membership where I can bring friends. And I was thinking about downgrading. My husband said to me, he's like, well, Amy, like, I think that's great. Don't downgrade your membership because you're not using it. Like, just start using it and like start like working out with different friends and different things and different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's something like I do. And they also have co-working space there too. So if I'm already like stuck out and I can't really get back to the office, it's great. So it's great like energy there. And then I see the same people. And so it's a really good place to be.
Yeah.
So all right. So what is your go-to coffee or food spot where you are?
Ooh, ooh, that's a tough one. So I gotta answer that with two. So coffee, I would
Okay.
definitely go for a place called Franco. So Franco has fantastic coffee, fantastic pastries here down in Costa Rica. And then again, you can't get any better for Costa Rican coffee. It's world class. It used to be one of our number one exports before the medical device thing, and it's still world known. But to be honest, if you really, 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 really want the best coffee, you come into my home and I prepare coffee for you. Like,
Oh, you do?
yeah. And
Do
then
you
again,
roast your own?
I don't roast, but I do have sort of these network of very specific vendors. One of them is a good lifelong friend called Diego El
Yeah.
Local. He roasts coffee, has his own farm. We actually used to have a band together, then again, for part two of the podcast,
Oh my Lord.
because I'm a musician. And we had a band together. So actually, I roasted with him a couple of weeks ago just because I was curious, like, hey, I'm doing this batch. Like, can I just go hang out with you? I think this is very cool. But the story there is because my wife is a pastry chef. And what we used to have like this little dates prior to the pandemic was like, hey, let's go look for a corner that we don't know. Let's go look for some great coffee, some great pastries. And that was sort of the glue that held our marriage together, our small little
Right.
dates. And then the pandemic came on. And we're like, don't worry about it. It's going to be 3 weeks. All good. And it was 3 weeks turning to 3 months, 3 months into 6 months. And we're like, okay, what is going to hold this marriage together? Because this is 6 months in and we're about to cut each other's head off. So our solution was, well, we can go out because everything is closed down. Let's just make our own. So we got
Yep.
certified as baristas, and we actually like do our own espressos and arte latte, and that's how we drink coffee at my place every single day. So if you really want the
Oh yeah.
best, you come into my place and we'll prepare coffee for you.
13 or 14 years ago, I bought my husband for Christmas a coffee roaster, and
Really?
he learned how to roast them from green. Now, obviously, the coffee roaster disappeared when we had our first child,
Mm-hmm.
and we finally sold it like on Facebook Marketplace. And we order from a place called Buddy Brew in
Mm-hmm.
Tampa,
Mm-hmm.
and they ship the beans like to us. But yeah, we are big coffee snobs in our house. That's probably why it's a question
That's
of
awesome.
ours. So
That's awesome. I need
I'm
to send
probably
you
going
some
to hear
coffee
the
then.
espresso machine going on in a minute.
Good.
So, uh, okay, my last question
Go.
is: if someone gave you $1 million and you can't invest it in real estate, what would you do with it?
Not real estate. What do I do with it? Oh my God.
I know it always throws everybody off.
$1 million. I can't do it in real estate. The honest question is I have no idea because that's what I know, real estate. But the very boring stock answer that I would go is I would probably just invest it in some stocks or something like that, but that is very
Index funds.
boring. So I would put it
Yeah.
differently. I would, yes, in that, but I would probably do it for my kids. I would try to advance them into something for well, I say kids because there's plans, right? But I only have one kid currently. Um, but like trying to set them up for it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I would think I would do that. And if it was not like me, my family centric, I would give that money to a foundation here in Costa Rica called Funda Vida. So I've been working with them for a while. There's this amazing guy called Chris Dernley. He's the founder of Funda Vida. And basically, what they do is that they provide a safe space and education for at-risk kids in very complicated communities in Costa Rica. But what I think it's awesome about what they do is to actually see that they see the full circle. It's not like, oh, we do this and then we see what happens. Like literally they take the whole development of them through the years.
Oh, that's
And
amazing.
one of the things that's interesting, Chris told me once, like when he started out, this is a very sharp guy, like Harvard Harvard Business School graduated guy. He said, "Hey, I feel like I need to do this thing, and where do I start? I don't know." So he went into the leader of one of these communities, like, "What can I do?" Like, "Oh, just bring some food, and we'll figure it out." And when he was talking to him, the first like event that he did before it was actually a foundation, he just brought hot dogs into those communities. And this phrase like always stops me in my tracks. The guy from the community said, "What can I do to help you and the community?" And he said, "Take care of these kids because if not, they will become the addicts of the future, right? And with that sort of foundation and phrase, he started all of his work. And that he remembered like doing there, and it was like chaos. Like there was one kid with 6 hot dogs in each part of his like his pants, and one was hitting each other. There was like blood and stuff. They were like, "What is happening here?" And then he just got down to the kid that started sort of the rumbling, that got to his eye level, like, "Hey, don't worry, man, I see you." And in that moment, he realized like he just wanted to be seen.
So if you were not to invest in the stock market and instead you talked about this amazing foundation, I think you told me before that your wife actually had a chance to kind of work for it and everything. You
Yeah.
probably put it there, right?
I'll definitely put it there. Like I remember the story of these guys. So there's this amazing guy called Chris Sternley. He's a good friend of ours, and the way he started, like, it's this brilliant, like, Harvard Business School educated guy. This brilliant guy. Like, he went out of consulting in that world into this, and he just went to the community and said, like, I don't even know what to do, where to start, how to help. So he went to one of the leaders of these communities, and he was like, what can I do, right? And this phrase like always stops me in my tracks when he tells the story, because what he told him was like, hey, Chris, help me take care of these kids, because if not, they become the addicts of the future. And that sort of became the foundation of Funda Vida. And it's just amazing to see the work these guys are doing. Like, and I'll give you an example. The other day, he was also telling me this story that there was this guy that came up to him. He was like, hey, Chris, I just want to thank you for everything Fundavia has done for me. Like, oh, well, tell me more. And he told the story, like, I started when I was like this little kid, and you protected me and gave me a safe space. And now all of that became of this guy applying to get his master's degree at Georgetown University. So the impact of what these guys are doing in Costa Rica's youth, for me, is just off the charts. So then again, if I can do the boring non-real estate, non-stock market kind of off-the-shelf answer for you, I'd probably put that money there.
It'd be well invested in your investing in the future. And I think it even like ties in full circle to what you were talking about the time that we spend today is often working on the future, and the same thing with that foundation and what they're doing. So that's awesome. So the best way to people to reach out to you, I understand, is LinkedIn.
LinkedIn is the fastest thing, and it's just a click away. And I'm pretty responsive because I'm pretty active on that platform. And if not, if you go into SIOR, you need my number, my email. You'll get all the information there, or even in the Cushman and Wakefield AB advisory site. So different ways to reach me, but fastest one, for sure, LinkedIn.
That's awesome. Well, I really appreciate you being on the show today. I want to also thank all the listeners for tuning into another episode of the Performance Mindset Show. If today's conversation gave you something to think about, be sure to follow the show and share it with someone who's ready to grow. You can find more insights, resources, and details about my book, From Perfect to Real, at amycalandrino.com. Until next time, keep investing in yourself, your business, and your mindset. This is Amy Calandrino signing off.